Hey guys, I'm going to continue where I left off yesterday, and I was talking about different personality types, strengths, and weaknesses, and how that affects your ability to find the right candidates and hire the right people for your team. So, yesterday we talked about what do you do if you're a creative personality, an open personality, and today we're going to talk a little bit about what if you're a disagreeable personality. And disagreeable, if you study psychology, sociology, it's not necessarily that you're a bad person or that you're a mad person or that you even disagree with people all the time, but you're probably a little bit more quick to do that. And what I mean by that is you're not the person who sleeps, loses sleep at night wondering what people thought about what you said. You're not that person. You tend to be data driven, engineer background perhaps. You're looking at numbers, you're looking at hard data, and you're making your decision on that. And you feel like normally everybody else should probably be making decisions that way as well. So the good thing about that is if you're in the hiring position, you're probably going to not make the mistake of the open person. You're not going to be make the mistake that some people do when they're interviewing someone where you're trying to persuade them to join your team, even if they're not a good match. You're going to be looking at their experience, their competence, their skill sets, who they've worked for, and you just want straight data. Don't waste my time. And that's going to be helpful because you're not going to necessarily accidentally qualify people that shouldn't be in that position. So what's the weakness of that personality? Well, if you tend to be all data all the time, even lean that direction, you're probably going to have a little bit harder time coming off as warm to the people that would be joining your team. That is, and why does that matter? Well, it connects to the biggest reason most people leave the company that they're with, and that is that they've had a conflict with a manager or a boss. And so knowing that that is usually the most common reason people leave an employer, try and put yourself in their shoes for a second when they're meeting with you. What would you not want to do? What would you want to do? If you've got a great candidate who's ultimately qualified for your position, whether it's medical or construction, blue collar, white collar, really doesn't matter. But if you're sitting there talking with someone, they're a great candidate, and you're thinking, what do I not want to do to wreck this? Just consider what might be the biggest reason that they're leaving is a conflict from a previous manager or boss. And so how does that play out? Well, if you're in an interview and you're not connecting with them, you might be, raising all the red flags that they're concerned with, that they're going to have issues at the company and they're not going to be heard, or they're not going to be able to talk about it, or they might, we had one of our partners who we helped find an employee for, and he had a guy that joined the team, and he asked him, just out of curiosity, why are you leaving that other company? And the guy said, well, truthfully, I'm just getting tired of being yelled at every morning for no reason at my current job. This is a guy who'd been working hard, putting in a ton of hours for this company, a lot of personal sacrifice. Family time was getting invaded by that job. And really, it just, even from this tough guy who'd had this great job and great performance, he was just tired of the abuse that he'd taken at the hands of his employer. So now put yourself in that position. You got a great candidate like him who's leaving that situation. Now he's going to meet with you, and you tend to be that guy who doesn't care too much about the emotions, right? Maybe maybe you're in that blue collar position where that's not the sort of thing you guys talk about all day. But interestingly, we have found whether it's construction or oil field workers or any of those, that this really matters to them. Whether they think they can connect with you and trust you is very important to whether they're going to make a decision to come and work for you. So it's really important that you take this into consideration and how you might be communicating, whether you mean to or not, certain things that make it hard for you to connect with this person. So like I said, surrounding yourself with people who are stronger could be really important. It's kind of that good cop, bad cop. And if you come off as that bad cop or that tough cop, having people around you that, your team knows they can trust and take concerns to would be really important. The second thing I think is a universal principle that goes back 2,000 years, and that's this: consider other people more important than yourself. So if you're a business owner and you've been doing that a long time, I bet that it might have been a while since you have felt what it feels like to make a change that's important to your finances, to your family, to your schedule, to your everyday habits that you're going to be doing at work. And so maybe you just haven't thought about that for a while. You haven't considered what is it like for that person to switch jobs and understand some of the stress that goes along with that. It's not a small thing to change jobs. It's going to be changing everything about your life. And so when someone's going to be joining your team, that's not a small decision. That's one of the biggest decisions they're going to make. And it's really important, if you're the leader of the company, that you take time to understand exactly what they're going through. Because if you don't understand it, you're not going to talk about it. And if you're not going to talk about it, you're not going to connect with those good candidates. So it's really important to take that time. So I think considering someone else more than important than ourselves, it's a biblical principle that goes all the way back to Jesus, is really helpful in this when we practice this, we actually take time to put ourselves in their shoes and say, what is it that I'm missing? What is it that I'm not understanding about these people? And maybe we'd start to identify, I might have missed 5 candidates this last week because I didn't take the time to understand what they're going through so that I could speak the language that they relate to and then make that trust connection. Every connection that we make in business, whether it's a client or it's an employee, comes back to trust. We have a saying in our work that we're the distrust busters, and the way that we do that is through a logical process, but we understand it's a relational process. So we present information gradually at a pace that's respectful to the people that are making decisions, whether they're clients or whether they're employees. And you need to do this if you're a business owner to understand that process as well. If we ignore this and just think, well, yeah, and here's why we ignore it sometimes as business owners. You've looked through hundreds of resumes and applications and you're kind of fatigued, and you've had a lot of people try and scam you. You've had some work comp claims come up, and it's kind of created this jadedness about our mind and our thoughts. And so let's say you had 20 people that were no-shows and you're just frustrated, and now you run into that new candidate who's a great one, but you take that attitude and that baggage from those first 20 interviews into this candidate's interview, and you spoil the whole process because you've had that attitude of frustration. So dealing with that attitude before you talk to each candidate is really important, and realizing, hey, this is a new day, this is a new candidate. I'm not going to assume the worst about this candidate. I'm going to assume the best. I'm going to give them every chance to, impress me with their past and their experience and their skills. And unless something happens, I'm going to think the best of them. So that's just a couple thoughts, things that we've seen, like I said, whether it's helping a hospital find new employees, or high-tech companies that we've worked with, or blue collar. If you'll take the time to understand how they're making that process, not just intellectually, not just with objective data, but relationally, and how that affects whether they trust you, you're going to have a lot better opportunity to make those connections with the right candidates when they come along. Have a great day.